Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Translated by Constance Garrett. As for you, mother, I don't dare to speak, he went on as though repeating a lesson learnt by heart. It is only today that I have been able to realize a little how distressed you must have been here yesterday, waiting for me to come back. When he had said this, he suddenly held out his hand to his sister, smiling without a word. But in this smile, there was a flash of real, unfeigned feeling. Donya caught it at once and warmly pressed his hand, overjoyed and thankful. It was the first time he had addressed her since their dispute the previous day. The mother's face lighted up with ecstatic happiness at the sight of this conclusive unspoken reconciliation. Yes, that is what I love him for. Razumihin, exaggerating it all, muttered to himself with a vigorous turn in his chair. He had these movements. And how well he does it all, the mother was thinking to herself. What generous impulses he has, and how simply, how delicately he put an end to all the misunderstanding with his sister, simply by holding out his hand at the right minute and looking at her like that. And what fine eyes he has, and how fine his whole face is. He is even better looking than Donya. But good heavens, what a suit! How terribly he is dressed! Vasya, the messenger boy in Afanasy Ivanovich's shop, is better dressed. I could rush at him and hug him, weep over him, but I'm afraid. Oh dear, he is so strange. He is talking kindly, but I'm afraid. Why, what am I afraid of? Oh, Rhodia, you won't believe. She began suddenly in haste to answer his words to her. How unhappy Donya and I were yesterday. Now that it's all over and done with, and we are quite happy again, I can tell you. Fancy we ran here almost straight from the train to embrace you. And that woman, ah, here she is. Good morning, Nastasia. She told us at once that you were lying in a high fever and had just run away from the doctor in delirium. And they were looking for you in the streets. You can't imagine how we felt. I couldn't help thinking of the tragic end of Lieutenant Tanchikov, a friend of your father's. You can't remember him, Rodya, who ran out in the same way in a high fever and fell into the well in the courtyard, and they couldn't pull him out till the next day. Of course, we exaggerated things. We were on the point of rushing to find Pyotr Petrovich to ask him to help because we were alone, utterly alone, she said plaintively, and stopped short suddenly, recollecting it was still somewhat dangerous to speak of Pyotr Petrovich, although we are quite happy again. Yes, yes, of course. It's very annoying, Raskolnikov muttered in reply, but with such a preoccupied and inattentive air that Donya gazed at him in perplexity. What else was it I wanted to say? He went on trying to recollect. Oh, yes, mother, and you too, Donya. Please don't think that I didn't mean to come and see you today and was waiting for you to come first. What are you saying, Rodya? Cried Pulcheria Alexandrovna. She too was surprised. Is he answering us as a duty? Donya wondered. Is he being reconciled and asking forgiveness as though he were performing a rite or repeating a lesson? I've only just woken up and wanted to go to you but was delayed owing to my clothes. I forgot yesterday to ask her, Nastasia, to wash out the blood. I've only just dressed. Blood? What blood? Pulcheria Alexandrovna asked in alarm. Oh, nothing. Don't be uneasy. It was when I was wandering about yesterday, rather delirious. I chanced upon a man who had been run over, a clerk. Delirious, but you remember everything, Razumihin interrupted. That's true, Raskolnikov answered with special carefulness. I remember everything, even to the slightest detail, and yet, why I did that and went there and said that, I can't clearly explain now. Familiar phenomenon, interposed Zozimov. Actions are sometimes performed in a masterly and most cunning way, while the direction of the actions is deranged and dependent on various morbid impressions. It's like a dream. Perhaps it's a good thing, really, that he should think me almost a madman, thought Raskolnikov. Why, people in perfect health act in the same way too, observed Donya, looking uneasily at Zozimov. There is some truth in your observation, the latter replied. In that sense, we are certainly all not infrequently like madmen, but with the slight difference that the deranged are somewhat madder. For we must draw a line. A normal man, it is true, hardly exists. Among dozens, perhaps hundreds of thousands, hardly one is to be met with. At the word madman, carelessly dropped by Zosimov in his chatter on his favorite subject, everyone frowned. Raskolnikov sat, seemingly not to pay attention, plunged in thought with a strange smile on his pale lips. He was still meditating on something. Well, what about the man who was run over? I interrupted you. Razumihin cried hastily. What? Raskolnikov seemed to wake up. Oh, I got spattered with blood helping to carry him to his lodgings. By the way, Mamma, I did an unpardonable thing yesterday. I was literally out of my mind. I gave away the money you sent me to his wife for the funeral. She is a widow now, in consumption, a poor creature. Three little children starving, nothing in the house. There's a daughter too. Perhaps you'd have given it yourself if you'd seen them. But I had no right to do it, I admit, especially as I knew how you needed the money yourself. To help others, one must have the right to do it, or else.
Crevez chien si vous n'êtes pas content.
He laughed. That's right, isn't it, Donya? No, it's not, answered Donya firmly. Bah, you two have ideals, he muttered, looking at her almost with hatred and smiling sarcastically. I ought to have considered that. Well, that's praiseworthy, and it's better for you. And if you reach a line you won't overstep, you will be unhappy. And if you overstep it, maybe you will be still unhappier. But all that's nonsense, he added irritably, vexed at being carried away. I only meant to say that I beg your forgiveness, mother, he concluded, shortly and abruptly. That's enough, Rodya. I'm sure that everything you do is very good, said his mother, delighted. Don't be too sure, he answered, twisting his mouth into a smile. A silence followed. There was a certain constraint in all this conversation, and in the silence, and in the reconciliation, and in the forgiveness, and all were feeling it. It is as though they were afraid of me, Raskolnikov was thinking to himself, looking askance at his mother and sister. Pulcheria Alexandrovna was indeed growing more timid the longer she kept silent. Yet, in their absence, I seemed to love them so much, flashed through his mind. Do you know, Rodya, Marfa Petrovna is dead. Pulcheria Alexandrovna suddenly blurted out. What, Marfa Petrovna? Oh, mercy on us! Marfa Petrovna, I wrote you so much about her. Ah, yes, I remember. So she is dead. Oh, really? He roused himself suddenly as if waking up. What did she die of? Only imagine. Quite suddenly. Pulcheria Alexandrovna answered hurriedly, encouraged by his curiosity. On the very day I was sending you that letter, would you believe it? That awful man seems to have been the cause of her death. They say he beat her dreadfully. Why? Were they on such bad terms? He asked, addressing his sister. Not at all. Quite the contrary, indeed. With her, he was always very patient, considerate even. In fact, all those 7 years of their married life, he gave way to her. Too much so, indeed, in many cases. All of a sudden, he seems to have lost patience. Then he could not have been so awful if he controlled himself for 7 years. You seem to be defending him, Donya. No, no, he's an awful man. I can imagine nothing more awful, Donya answered almost with a shudder, knitting her brows and sinking into thought. That had happened in the morning. Pulcheria Alexandrovna went on hurriedly, and directly afterwards she ordered the horses to be harnessed to drive to the town immediately after dinner. She always used to drive to the town in such cases. She ate a very good dinner, I'm told. After the beating, that was always her habit, and immediately after dinner, so as not to be late in starting, she went to the bathhouse. You see, she was undergoing some treatment with baths. They have a cold spring there, and she used to bathe in it regularly, every day, and no sooner had she got into the water when she suddenly had a stroke. I should think so, said Zozimov. And did he beat her badly? What does that matter? Put in Donya. But I don't know why you want to tell us such gossip, mother, said Raskolnikov irritably, as it were in spite of himself. Ah, my dear, I don't know what to talk about, broke from Pulcheria Alexandrovna. Why are you all afraid of me? He asked with a constrained smile. That's certainly true, said Donya, looking directly and sternly at her brother. Mother was crossing herself with terror as she came up the stairs. His face worked as though in convulsion. Ugh, what are you saying, Donya? Don't be angry, please, Rodya. Why did you say that, Donya? Pulcheria Alexandrovna began, overwhelmed. You see, coming here, I was dreaming all the way in the train how we should meet, how we should talk over everything together. And I was so happy. I did not notice the journey. But what am I saying? I am happy now. You should not, Donya. I am happy now, simply in seeing you, Rodya. Hush, mother, he muttered in confusion, not looking at her but pressing her hand. We shall have time to speak freely of everything. As he said this, he was suddenly overwhelmed with confusion and turned pale. Again, that awful sensation he had known of late passed with deadly chill over his soul. Again, it became suddenly plain and perceptible to him that he had just told a fearful lie, that he would never now be able to speak freely of everything, that he would never again be able to speak of anything to anyone. The anguish of this thought was such that for a moment he almost forgot himself. He got up from his seat and, not looking at anyone, walked towards the door. What are you about? Cried Razumihin, clutching him by the arm. He sat down again and began looking about him in silence. They were all looking at him in perplexity. But what are you all so dull for? He shouted, suddenly and quite unexpectedly. Do say something. What's the use of sitting like this? Come, do speak. Let's talk. We meet together and sit in silence. Come, anything. Thank God. I was afraid the same thing as yesterday was beginning again, said Pulcheria Alexandrovna, crossing herself. What is the matter, Rodya? Asked Avdotya Romanovna distrustfully. Oh, nothing. I remembered something, he answered and suddenly laughed. Well, if you remembered something, that's all right. I was beginning to think, muttered Zozimov, getting up from the sofa. It is time for me to be off. I will look in again, perhaps, if I can. He made his bows and went out. What an excellent man, observed Pulcheria Alexandrovna. Yes, excellent, splendid, well educated, intelligent, Raskolnikov began, suddenly speaking with surprising rapidity and a liveliness he had not shown till then. I can't remember where I met him before my illness. I believe I have met him somewhere. And this is a good man too, he nodded at Razumihin. Do you like him, Donya? He asked her and suddenly, for some unknown reason, laughed. Very much, answered Donya. Fool! What a pig you are! Razumihin protested, blushing in terrible confusion, and he got up from his chair. Pulcheria Alexandrovna smiled faintly, but Raskolnikov laughed aloud. Where are you off to? I must go. You need not at all. Stay. Zozimov has gone. You must stay. Don't go. What's the time? Is it 12 o'clock? What a pretty watch you have got, Donya. But why are you so silent again? I do all the talking. It was a present from Marfa Petrovna, answered Donya. And a very expensive one, added Pulcheria Alexandrovna. Ah, what a big one. Hardly like a lady's. I like that sort, said Donya. So it is not a present from her fiancé, thought Razumihin, and was unreasonably delighted. I thought it was from Ruzahin, observed Raskolnikov. No, he has not made Donya any presents yet. Ah, and do you remember, mother? I was in love and wanted to get married, he said suddenly, looking at his mother, who was disconcerted by the sudden change of subject and the way he spoke of it. Oh, yes, my dear. Pulcheria Alexandrovna exchanged glances with Donya and Razumihin. Yes. What shall I tell you? I don't remember much indeed. She was such a sickly girl, he went on, growing dreamy and looking down again. Quite an invalid. She was fond of giving alms to the poor and was always dreaming of a nunnery. And once she burst into tears when she began talking to me about it. Yes, yes, I remember. I remember very well. She was an ugly little thing. I really don't know what drew me to her then. I think it was because she was always ill. If she had been lame or hunchback, I believe I should have liked her better still. He smiled dreamily. Yes, it was a sort of spring delirium. No, it was not only spring delirium, said Donya with warm feeling. He fixed a strained, intent look on his sister, but did not hear or did not understand her words. Then, completely lost in thought, he got up, went up to his mother, kissed her, went back to his place, and sat down. You love her even now, said Pulcheria Alexandrovna, touched. Her? Now? Oh, yes. You ask about her. No. That's all now, as it were, in another world, and so long ago. And indeed, everything happening here seems somehow far away. He looked attentively at them. You? Now, I seem to be looking at you from 1,000 miles away. But goodness knows why we are talking of that. And what's the use of asking about it? He added with annoyance and biting his nails, fell into dreamy silence again. What a wretched lodging you have, Rodya. It's like a tomb, said Pulcheria Alexandrovna, suddenly breaking the oppressive silence. I'm sure it's quite half through your lodging. You have become so melancholy. My lodging, he answered listlessly. Yes, the lodging had a great deal to do with it. I thought that too. If only you knew, though, what a strange thing you said just now, mother, he said, laughing strangely. A little more, and their companionship, this mother and this sister, with him, after 3 years' absence, This intimate tone of conversation in face of the utter impossibility of really speaking about anything would have been beyond his power of endurance. But there was one urgent matter which must be settled one way or the other that day. So he had decided when he woke. Now he was glad to remember it as a means of escape. Listen, Donya, he began gravely and dryly. Of course, I beg your pardon for yesterday, and I consider it my duty to tell you again that I do not withdraw from my chief point. It is me or Lucihin. If I am a scoundrel, you must not be. One is enough. If you marry Lucihin, I cease at once to look on you as a sister. Rodya, Rodya, it is the same as yesterday again. Pulcheria Alexandrovna cried mournfully. And why do you call yourself a scoundrel? I can't bear it. You said the same yesterday. Brother, Donya answered firmly and with the same dryness. In all this, there is a mistake on your part. I thought it over at night and found out the mistake. It is all because you seem to fancy I'm sacrificing myself to someone and for someone. That is not the case at all. I'm simply marrying for my own sake because things are hard for me. Though, of course, I shall be glad if I succeed in being useful to my family, but that is not the chief motive for my decision. She is lying, he thought to himself, biting his nails vindictively. Proud creature. She won't admit she wants to do it out of charity. Too haughty. Oh, base characters. They even love as though they hate. Oh, how I hate them all. In fact, continued Donya, I'm marrying Pyotr Petrovich because of two evils I chose the less. I intend to do honestly all he expects of me, so I am not deceiving him. Why did you smile just now? She too flushed, and there was a gleam of anger in her eyes. All? He asked with a malignant grin. With certain limits, both the manner and form of Pyotr Petrovich's courtship showed me at once what he wanted. He may, of course, think too well of himself, but I hope he esteems me too. Why are you laughing again? And why are you blushing again? You are lying, sister. You are intentionally lying, simply from feminine obstinacy, simply to hold your own against me. You cannot respect Lucihin. I have seen him and talked with him. So you are selling yourself for money. And so, in any case, you are acting basely. And I'm glad at least that you can blush for it. It is not true. I'm not lying, cried Donya, losing her composure. I would not marry him if I were not convinced that he esteems me and thinks highly of me. I would not marry him if I were not firmly convinced that I can respect him. Fortunately, I can have convincing proof of it this very day. And such a marriage is not a vileness, as you say. And even if you were right, if I really had determined on a vile action, is it not merciless on your part to speak to me like that? Why do you demand of me a heroism that perhaps you have not either? It's despotism. It is tyranny. If I ruin anyone, it is only myself. I'm not committing a murder. Why do you look at me like that? Why are you so pale? Rodya, darling, what's the matter? Good heavens, you have made him faint, cried Pulcheria Alexandrovna. No, no, nonsense. It's nothing. A little giddiness, not fainting. You have fainting on the brain. Yes. What was I saying? Oh, yes. In what way will you get convincing proof today that you can respect him and that he esteems you, as you said? I think you said today. Mother, show Rodya. Pyotr Petrovich's letter, said Donya. With trembling hands, Pulcheria Alexandrovna gave him the letter. He took it with great interest, but before opening it, he suddenly looked with a sort of wonder at Donya. It is strange, he said slowly, as though struck by a new idea. What am I making such a fuss for? What is it all about? Marry whom you like. He said this as though to himself, but said it aloud and looked for some time at his sister as though puzzled. He opened the letter at last, still with the same look of strange wonder on his face. Then, slowly and attentively, he began reading and read it through twice. Pulcheria Alexandrovna showed marked anxiety and all indeed expected something particular. What surprises me, he began after a short pause, handing the letter to his mother, but not addressing anyone in particular, is that he is a businessman, a lawyer, and his conversation is pretentious indeed, and yet he writes such an uneducated letter. They all started. They had expected something quite different. But they all write like that, Razumahin observed abruptly. Have you read it? Yes. We showed him, Rodya. We consulted him just now. Pulcheria Alexandrovna began, embarrassed. That's just the jargon of the courts, Razumahin put in. Legal documents are written like that to this day. Legal? Yes, it's just legal business language. Not so very uneducated and not quite educated. Business language. Pyotr Petrovich makes no secret of the fact that he had a cheap education. He is proud indeed of having made his own way. Avdotia Romanovna observed, somewhat offended by her brother's tone. Well, if he is proud of it, he has reason. I don't deny it. You seem to be offended, sister, at my making only such a frivolous criticism on the letter, and to think that I speak of such trifling matters on purpose to annoy you. It is quite the contrary. An observation apropos of the style occurred to me that it is by no means irrelevant as things stand. There is one expression, blame yourselves, put in very significantly and plainly, and there is besides a threat that he will go away at once if I am present. That threat to go away is equivalent to a threat to abandon you both if you are disobedient, and to abandon you now after summoning you to Petersburg. Well, what do you think? Can one resent such an expression from Luzahin as we should if he appointed to Razumihin, had written it, or Zosimov, or one of us? No, answered Donya with more animation. I saw clearly that it was too naively expressed and that perhaps he simply has no skill in writing. That is a true criticism, brother. I did not expect, indeed. It is expressed in legal style and sounds coarser than perhaps he intended. But I must disillusion you a little. There is one expression in the letter, one slander about me, and rather a contemptible one. I gave the money last night to the widow, a woman in consumption, crushed with trouble, and not on the pretext of a funeral, but simply to pay for the funeral, but not to the daughter, a young woman, as he writes, of notorious behavior, whom I saw last night for the first time in my life, but to the widow. In all this, I see a too hasty desire to slander me and to raise dissension between us. It is expressed again in legal jargon, that is to say, with a too obvious display of aim and with a very naive eagerness. He is a man of intelligence, but to act sensibly, intelligence is not enough. It all shows the man, and I don't think he has a great esteem for you. I tell you this simply to warn you, because I sincerely wish for you good. Donya did not reply. Her resolution had been taken. She was only awaiting the evening. Then what is your decision, Rodya? Asked Pulcheria Alexandrovna, who was more uneasy than ever at the sudden, new businesslike tone of his talk. What decision? You see, Pyotr Petrovich writes that you are not to be with us this evening and that he will go away if you come. So, will you come? That, of course, is not for me to decide, but for you first, if you are not offended by such a request, and secondly, by Donya, if she too is not offended. I will do what you think best, he added dryly. Donya has already decided, and I fully agree with her. Pulcheria Alexandrovna hastened to declare. I decided to ask you, Rodia, to urge you not to fail to be with us at this interview, said Donya. Will you come? Yes, I will ask you too to be with us at 8 o'clock, she said, addressing Razumahin. Mother, I'm inviting him too. Quite right, Donya. Well, since you have decided, added Pulcheria Alexandrovna, so be it. I shall feel easier myself. I do not like concealment and deception. Better let us have the whole truth. Pyotr Petrovich may be angry or not now. Chapter 4. At that moment, the door was softly opened, and a young girl walked into the room, looking timidly about her. Everyone turned towards her with surprise and curiosity. At first sight, Raskolnikov did not recognize her. It was Sofia Semyonovna Marmeladov. He had seen her yesterday for the first time, but at such a moment, in such surroundings, and in such a dress, that his memory retained a very different image of her. Now she was a modestly and poorly dressed young girl, very young indeed, almost like a child with a modest and refined manner, with a candid but somewhat frightened looking face. She was wearing a very plain indoor dress and had on a shabby old fashioned hat, but she still carried a parasol. Unexpectedly, finding the room full of people, she was not so much embarrassed as completely overwhelmed with shyness, like a little child. She was even about to retreat. Oh, it's you, said Raskolnikov, extremely astonished, and he too was confused. He at once recollected that his mother and sister knew through Luzahin's letter of some young woman of notorious behavior. He had only just been protesting against Luzahin's calumny and declaring that he had seen the girl last night for the first time, and suddenly she had walked in. He remembered, too, that he had not protested against the expression of notorious behavior. All this passed vaguely and fleetingly through his brain, but looking at her more intently, he saw that the humiliated creature was so humiliated that he felt suddenly sorry for her. When she made a movement to retreat in terror, it sent a pang to his heart. I did not expect you, he said hurriedly, with a look that made her stop. Please sit down. You come, no doubt, from Katerina Ivanovna. Allow me, not there, sit here. At Sonia's entrance, Razumihin, who had been sitting on one of Raskolnikov's three chairs, close to the door, got up to allow her to enter. Raskolnikov had at first shown her the place on the sofa where Zosimov had been sitting, but feeling that the sofa, which served him as a bed, was too familiar a place, he hurriedly motioned her to Razumihin's chair. You sit here, he said to Razumihin, putting him on the sofa. Sonia sat down, almost shaking with terror and looking timidly at the two ladies. It was evidently almost inconceivable to her that she could sit down beside them. At the thought of it, she was so frightened that she hurriedly got up again and, in utter confusion, addressed Raskolnikov. I, I have come for a minute. Forgive me for disturbing you, she began falteringly. I come from Katerina Ivanova, and she had no one to send. Katerina Ivanova told me to beg you to be at the service in the morning at Mitrofanievsky, and then to us, to her, to do her the honor. She told me to beg you. Sonia stammered and ceased speaking. I will try. Certainly, most certainly, answered Raskolnikov. He too stood up and he too faltered and could not finish his sentence. Please sit down, he said suddenly. I want to talk to you. You are perhaps in a hurry, but please, be so kind, spare me 2 minutes. And he drew up a chair for her. Sonia sat down again, and again timidly she took a hurried, frightened look at the two ladies and dropped her eyes. Raskolnikov's pale face flushed, a shudder passed over him. His eyes glowed. Mother, he said firmly and insistently, this is Sofya Yonovna Marmeladov, the daughter of that unfortunate Mr. Marmeladov, who was run over yesterday before my eyes and of whom I was just telling you. Pulcheria Alexandrovna glanced at Sonia and slightly screwed up her eyes. In spite of her embarrassment before Rodya's urgent and challenging look, she could not deny herself that satisfaction. Donya gazed gravely and intently into the poor girl's face and scrutinized her with perplexity. Sonia, hearing herself introduced, tried to raise her eyes again, but was more embarrassed than ever. I wanted to ask you, said Raskolnikov hastily, how things were arranged yesterday. You were not worried by the police, for instance. No, that was all right. It was too evident, the cause of death. They did not worry us. Only the lodgers. They are angry. Why? At the bodies remaining so long. You see, it is hot now, so that today they will carry it to the cemetery into the chapel until tomorrow. At first, Katerina Ivanova was unwilling, but now she sees herself that it's necessary. Today, then, she begs you to do us the honor to be in the church tomorrow for the service and then to be present at the funeral lunch. She is giving a funeral lunch? Yes, just a little. She told me to thank you very much for helping us yesterday. But for you, we should have had nothing for the funeral. All at once, her lips and chin began trembling, but with an effort, she controlled herself, looking down again. During the conversation, Raskolnikov watched her carefully. She had a thin, very thin, pale little face, rather irregular and angular, with a sharp little nose and chin. She could not have been called pretty, but her blue eyes were so clear, and when they lighted up, there was such a kindliness and simplicity in her expression that one could not help being attracted. Her face and her whole figure, indeed, had another peculiar characteristic. In spite of her 18 years, she looked almost a little girl, almost a child, and in some of her gestures, this childishness seemed almost absurd. But has Katerina Ivanova been able to manage with such small means? Does she even mean to have a funeral lunch? Raskolnikov asked persistently, keeping up the conversation. The coffin will be plain, of course, and everything will be so plain so it won't cost much. Katerina Ivanova and I have reckoned it all out so that there will be enough left. And Katerina Ivanova was very anxious it should be so. You know, one can't. It's a comfort to her. She is like that, you know. I understand, of course. Why do you look at my room like that? My mother has just said it is like a tomb. You just gave us everything yesterday, Sonia said suddenly in reply, in a loud, rapid whisper. And again she looked down in confusion. Her lips and chin were trembling once more. She had been struck at once by Raskolnikov's poor surroundings, and now these words broke out spontaneously. A silence followed. There was a light in Donya's eyes, and even Pulcheria Alexandrovna looked kindly at Sonia. Rhodia, she said, getting up. We shall have dinner together, of course. Come, Donia, and you, Rhodia, had better go for a little walk and then rest and lie down before you come to see us. I'm afraid we have exhausted you. Yes, yes, I'll come, he answered, getting up fussily. But I have something to see to. But surely you will have dinner together, cried Razumihin, looking in surprise at Raskolnikov. What do you mean? Yes, yes, I'm coming, of course, of course. And you stay a minute. You do not want him just now, do you, mother? Or perhaps I am taking him from you. Oh, no, no. And will you, Dmitri Prokofitch, do us the favor of dining with us? Please do, added Donya. Razumihin bowed, positively radiant. For one moment, they were all strangely embarrassed. Goodbye, Rodya. That is till we meet. I do not like saying goodbye. Goodbye, Nastasia. Ah, I have said goodbye again. Pulcheria Alexandrovna meant to greet Sonia too, but it somehow failed to come off and she went in a flutter out of the room. And Avdotia Romanovna seemed to await her turn and, following her mother out, gave Sonia an attentive, courteous bow. Sonia, in confusion, gave a hurried, frightened curtsy. There was a look of poignant discomfort in her face as though Avdotia Romanovna's courtesy and attention were oppressive and painful to her. Donya, goodbye, called Raskolnikov in the passage. Give me your hand. Why, I did give it to you. Have you forgotten? Said Donya, turning warmly and awkwardly to him. Never mind, give it to me again. And he squeezed her fingers warmly. Donya smiled, flushed, pulled her hand away, and went off quite happy. That's the capital, he said to Sonia, going back and looking brightly at her. God give peace to the dead, the living have still to live. That is right, isn't it? Sonia looked surprised at the sudden brightness of his face. He looked at her for some moments in silence. The whole history of the dead father floated before his memory in those moments.